Once you have a schedule that you can use, you use that schedule to actually run the performance test and gather data. So I'm going to talk about how to launch a schedule using the Workbench. I'll go over what happens when you launch. I'll go over the default report that shows up when you're doing a run. I'll also show you how to add user comments so that you can know what this test was about later when you look at it and wonder why you ran this test. And also talk about monitoring a single user from the Workbench while the test is running. So I'm looking at a schedule that I have created here, and there's a run button, and you hit run, and that will launch the schedule. This particular schedule has many different groups, and the groups have different actions in them. In the corner there, it shows you what percentage, the lower left corner, it shows you what percentage of the way through it is launching the schedule. And I get a warning about conflicting requirements because I have more than one fragment that has the same page name in it. And I have requirements, performance requirements on those elements. And even though the performance requirements are the same and the element names are the same, RPT thinks it's a good idea to give me a warning that I've got two or more elements that have different requirements, even though they're the same. I've complained about that, but it's not getting fixed. Right, so the test is launching, and in this particular case here, I'm now getting told that my password for a resource that I'm monitoring is out of date because the passwords have changed. So I have to change the password. You'll get that warning if it's trying to monitor a Windows system and the password's no good. And it tells you that it's ramping. It's on its way to the first stage now. You can look at the performance test in the lower left corner, and right there you can enter user comments by clicking on the user comments field. And it is a best practice to enter a comment as you're running a test, because by next week, after you've run 10 other tests, you won't remember why you ran this test. So the comment, I typically say, well, this is what I've changed in this run. This is why I'm doing the run. This is my tuning settings. This is the build that I'm running, and things like that. This is the default performance report that RPT shows you while the run is in progress. The different bars show different status information. Percent stage status code success, page element status code success, and page element verification points passed. And there are a number of other tabs. There's a summary tab that gives you some statistics. The most interesting ones are the number of active users, the elapsed time, which will show you how long your plateau's been running when you're in a plateau. Your user comments show up in there. And you got the average response time for all the pages. Now the one piece of information that's missing is pages per second for your plateau. And they don't put that there by default, but I did learn recently that you can put it there yourself, and I'll show you how to do that in a later lecture. You can look at the page performance tab, and it shows you the average response time. When you're in a plateau, it'll show you the average for that plateau, and hovering over, you can see which command it is, or which page it is. And if you look below, you can get a table view of the same thing with detailed information. And there's other tabs that you have to scroll to. That I'm going to the one that shows CPU information, so you can monitor CPU information during the run. When you're in a plateau, it shows you the average for that plateau, or the information for that plateau. When you're between plateaus, it shows you for the entire run. It shows you the average for the entire run. Now I'm showing here is you can monitor a particular virtual user and see what that virtual user is seeing. You click on the little icon, you pick a user by group and the particular user, and you say OK. And I click the browser tab over on the left. And so when a page arrives, you will see exactly what that particular virtual user's browser would see. And there's the Read News page. You can see that shows up, and here's what it looks like. So you can monitor a particular user during the course of a test, and that's useful for debugging. You can see the request parameters and the response headers. And you can even see the raw HTML. One thing I have noticed is that you don't want to be monitoring that user during a run for too long. I've seen RPT send extra requests that I don't quite understand. So when you're done monitoring, it's best to turn off the monitoring. All right, so that covers how to launch a schedule from the Workbench, and quickly went over what happens when you launch, and looked at quick look at the default performance report. I showed you how to add user comments, which I recommend doing, and I showed you how to monitor a single user using the Workbench.